一刷根39大林邦呀，腾邦腾腾啊巴扎呀扎呀。
First, just thank the local community and the local indigenous people here for allowing us to come on their land and have this space. So I'm really thankful for both the Earth Passengers and also the local indigenous people that live here as well. My name's Jeremiah Kidd, and I have a permaculture company in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So I'm based there, but then I've been working in Africa about 20 years as well. And so we've been teaching, doing PDCs and doing trainings, agroforestry trainings for 20 years there, and mostly based in South Africa. And so we've seen some really good productive systems that have been growing over the years, but mostly they're with maybe a school or a church or an NGO or some place that the ones that have continued are kind of on a non-profit sector, right? And so we haven't really seen as many farmers really taking up these permaculture or like perennial systems as their own economic livelihood, right? So as much as we, want to not worry about money, right? We still usually need some money, right? To, again, pay for school fees or maybe phone data or traveling. There's some things that we need some income for, right? So how can we, so then often farmers have to either have a side job or they're often just growing cash crops because they don't have enough savings to wait for 5 years, 7 years for a perennial, for fruit trees, nut trees, and crops like that, right? So then they're kind of caught in this continual short season annual cropping pattern, right? So me and a couple of friends that work together in Africa decided, okay, well then maybe we need to try to show a model of this. Can we make this happen? And can it be profitable? Can we provide fiber, fuel, fodder, meat or eggs, food, fruit, while sequestering carbon and producing an income for the farmers? Right? And so this is our project. We started Forest Foods. We had first kind of a demonstration farm or like a test farm, and then now we have 3 farms that are fully in operation, and we just bought land to start our 4th farm. So these are all based in Kenya at the moment. This is a little just intro kind of video. Hopefully this works.
In the last 5 decades, Kenya has lost over 90% of its forest cover. And sadly, other parts of Africa are experiencing similar catastrophes. A major contribution towards increasing forest cover must come from profitable agroforestry. Leaf Africa is really excited to be launching Forest Foods, a premium fresh produce brand that will be in full control over the entire supply chain, from seed to consumer. Over the years, we have learned a lot from our friends and colleagues in Brazil who are pioneers of tropical agroforestry. With that knowledge and expertise, we have designed localized modular agroforestry systems that can be adapted into East Africa's multitude of agroecological zones. By mimicking natural succession, we now have the knowledge to produce nutrient-dense foods, foster biodiversity, fight climate change, and reforest landscapes while turning profits and supplying an ever-growing market of conscious consumers with consistent, transparent, and traceable food. Join the Forest Foods journey and be part of the change.
So that's a little introduction of the company, basically. And then, has anyone heard of Syntropic Agroforestry? Right? Okay. So, yeah, so it's basically just trying to, it's both designing in space and time, right? So the mapping of the land, but also in sequential time with the plants, right? So thinking about all of the spacing, where you put things, what sun needs it and shade needs that a certain plant needs, and then thinking about succession over time, okay? So obviously when you start the farm, there's lots of sun, right? Because it's just an open field, right? And all the trees are small, so they're not providing any shade yet. So there's a lot of opportunity for cash crops, right? For annual crops and short-term crops. And then typically the ground starts off to be more bacteria, and then over time, as the trees start to grow and mature, it becomes more fungal in the soil, right? And so it's basically planting in time and space, right? So it's a methodology. Again, we're permaculturalists that are doing this, but this is kind of like a methodology, right, of a farm design. It's very productive. Another aspect of syntropic agroforestry is you're trying to speed up the growing process by lots of trimming and pruning and chop and drop, so lots of mulch. So always keeping the soil covered and returning those nutrients back to the soil to break down quickly, right? And so you can also manage the sun and the shade by that pruning, right? So if you have crops that need more sun, then you can prune more. And then if you need crops that need more shade, then you can allow the branches and leaves to provide more shade. Then of course over time, this is a 10-year cycle here. Over time, the trees will get bigger and there'll be more and more shade, right? So then that gives you opportunities to plant more understory crops, coffee, cacao, things that can grow that want more shade, right? Or if you want to still grow more crops with sun, then you just prune more, right? We use a lot of eucalyptus in the system. Eucalyptus gets a bad name, I think, in a lot of forestry contexts, but it's a very fast-growing tree, and we have had no problems with it growing with other crops. So we use that to be our emergent pioneer species that grows really fast, gives us lots of biomass. We make oils out of it. We get lots of mulch from it. And then once it gets maybe 15 or 5 meters, we cut out the top for a pole, and you coppice it, and then the lower part gets fatter and fatter and produces a nice log, right? And so you're producing poles, possibly fuel for, charcoal, for cooking, construction. So we get lots of different products out of the different plants and trees, right? So we're really working with conservation tillage. So we only till once, right? So typically we'll test the soil and see what it needs, right? Because at first maybe this soil here needs some calcium, or it needs some sulfur, it needs some phosphorus, or something to kind of set the stage, right? So usually those inputs are really only like mycorrhizal inoculants and then minerals to start, right? So it might need, like I was saying, sulfur or calcium or phosphorus, something like that. We can always build nitrogen into the soil, but those other minerals are difficult to come by, right? And you might work for 5 or 6 years and something's not doing well just because it's short on sulfur, or short on calcium, or there's maybe too much magnesium and not the right balance of magnesium and calcium. So we test the soil. If we need any soil minerals, we till it once just to loosen the soil. So like our second farm was like a football pitch, right? So it was very compacted, hard, just grass for 20 years, right? So we tilled it the first time, then after that we don't till at all, right? We intensively plant so that we really minimize the amount of weeds, and then you always just keep the soil covered. So mulching. And as you're harvesting, you're cutting and harvesting the vegetables out. You just let the roots die off in the soil, and then they rot, and then it provides space in the soil. The soil stays nice and uncompacted. So then the important part is being very diligent about that you have paths and you stick to the paths, right? And you don't ever walk on the beds, because you don't want to be compacting, because if we don't want to till, we can't compact the soil, because that's usually what people do with tilling. They're trying to knock back weeds, and they're trying to aerate or loosen the soil. But if you don't walk on the beds, then they don't get compacted. Right? So conservation tillage, really thinking about diversity. We're growing about, depends on which farm, between 60 and 100 different crops on each farm. So from short-term vegetables up to long-term timber trees and nut trees, fruit trees. And obviously rotating and then doing cover crops, right? We don't do, so we're always thinking about what can grow well together, and then we're intensively planting them to reduce the amount of weed pressure on them, right? So obviously we're pesticide-free, we're organic. We also incorporate, mostly we've been incorporating chickens, but also some goats and sheep as well. But you have to be very careful about animal husbandry, right? So typically about half the farm is like cash crops or vegetables in between the rows of trees, and about half the farm is pasture between the rows of trees, right, for the animals. So all of this, you all probably know from your permaculture courses, right? But doing this different stratification of like both from roots to perennials and ground covers to small shrubs, small trees, medium-sized trees, and then overstory trees, and then just obviously the mulch from that tree. So imagine the leaves from a tree is the same nutrients and fertilizer that tree needs to grow, right? And so just returning those nutrients quickly to the soil, and then if you have alive soils, then it breaks down very quickly, right? So this is kind of like those eucalyptus poles I was talking about. So we let them grow up, and then we cut them off. So you get a pole out of the top, and then the remainder starts growing out a lot fatter, right? And then when you prune out the top, then you're providing a lot more sunlight to come in. Right? Typically, we'll plant the rows north to south, and that allows the maximum sun, right? Because you have morning east sun, and then sun all day, and then afternoon sun. Sometimes we adjust that depending on the contour, right? So we always want to think about the contour and water harvesting as well. But if you're looking for maximum production and maximum sunlight, then typically you're planting your rows north to south. Okay.
I was just going to say, it's really triggering for a eucalyptus, living in eucalyptus land.
Right.
It's really weird. I'm glad you're getting this production. In Australia, we just do not include eucalyptus in the system these days.
Right.
We love them as in nature, but they're kind of made like nutrient water thieves, and then they allelopathic.
Right, yeah.
Coming out like plants put some chemicals through their roots. But I suppose if you're having a more fertile system and also cutting them regularly or suppressing the root growth,
Right.
yeah.
No, we haven't had that issue though. We've heard about the allelopathic, people talked about that, and often when you see large eucalypts, there's not much growing underneath them, but we're growing vegetables right up to their trunks, and they're just okay, maybe they're wanting some water and they're wanting some nutrients, but if all of that's returned to the soil, then you're just basically getting this you're just feeding the soil quickly with the leaves. So we haven't had any issues with that, with allelopathic issues and so forth. So, yeah. And in Brazil, they've been using them for 30, 40 years in that manner. So farmers are really good at farming, right? But often, maybe they don't have a large bank account to wait for 5 or 6 years for income, right? So typically fruit farms or tree farms are more bigger corporations. They come in because they know, okay, we have this $100,000 we can invest, and we can wait 5 years for our mangoes, or we can wait, this many years for our Brazil nuts, or whatever it is, right? But for small-scale farmers, that's really a difficult proposition, right? So we often see them having, okay, we have a small, maybe household farm, right, or household forest garden, but then they have most of their crops are cash crops, annual vegetables, right? So we're trying to say like, okay, how can we help? That's the social part of what we're trying to do, right? Is doing farm plans, right? So a replicable farm plan that can just be a 1 hectare piece that can be replicated over and over again, right? And with the layout of different biomes, then different planting plans, right? So in 45 days, you're going to get your radishes, your rocket, your lettuce, your coriander, in a month and a half, right? You're going to have a cash crop out of that, right? Then in 60 days, you're going to have more lettuce, chicory, chard, turnip, black turtle beans. So this is time and this is space, right? So this is ground cover, this is medium elevation, this is more canopy, and then emergent is our top trees, right? And then this is time. So this is like elevation, like space, and then this is going on when you're going to harvest, right? So we're trying to give an example of where it's like, look, if you do this, if you plant these crops, you're going to get an income in 45 days. Right? So if you can last 6 weeks, you're going to have an income. And then each week, you're going to be having income from there. And then these vegetables and cash crops are going to bridge you to your perennial systems. Right? So then in 9 months, you're getting your papayas. In 12 months, you're getting your bananas. And, so then you're off and having an income from 45 days in. Okay? So that's kind of the more kind of economic. We also have budgets that we've laid out. So if you wanted to start with this much land, this is how much money you need to start. So this is kind of more of a budgeting platform. And this is all open source. So then we're trying to incorporate other farmers. So we have our own farms, but then we're also trying to incorporate other small farmers, right? 92% of the food in Africa, in Kenya area, is farmed by farmers that have like 2 acres or less, right? So there are some big, large farms, but most of the farmers and the farming area is very small landowners, right? And they often don't have post-harvest processing centers, and so that's another open space that we're providing. We built these, at each farm have a post-harvest processing center that they can come and wash their produce. And then again, we'll get into later, there's the marketing, right? Because farmers are good at growing food, but maybe not at budgeting, and maybe not at packaging, and maybe not at marketing, and maybe not all of the other pieces, right? So then they grow 10 tons of watermelon, and then it's like, what am I going to do with 10 tons of watermelon? And then you end up selling it to the cheapest, the middlemen that make all the money, right? Because there's usually an average of like 4 steps to get a product to market, typically to the consumer. So we're trying to reduce that to maybe 1 or none, like straight. So we sell straight from our website, and also we work with another online seller. So then there's 1 step between. So the farm, then there's 1 distribution, and then straight to the customer. So you're getting a higher rate of return, right? And then that also allows you to be more diverse in your products, right? Because then you can say, okay, I know they're going to take radishes and coriander and basil and this and maybe my soaps and multiple products. So budgeting, I think, is important, right? This is that plug and play module. So like showing your rows and like what to plant in each row. This is also a really good, this Regenworks is an online platform that you can use to design your own agroforestry farm. So I think it's Regen, I have it on the next slide, Regen something back. But yeah, just Regenworks if you just Google that. So we've been using that and then tracking data on it all. Here's this also the Regenworks. So we've been using their software some, and then adapting it to the local context, right? So currently we have 3 working farms, and we're doing them at different biomes, right, different elevations. So the first one is up on Mount Kenya, so it's cold enough to grow like stone fruits, right? So plums, nectarines, peaches, apples, things like that need some cold time of the year. But it's too cold for bananas, it's too cold for papayas, things like that. Then the next farm is closer to Nairobi. It's down in elevation, about 2,000 feet. And then there but it's like in this area, like cloudy kind of mountains, right? So it's subtropical, it doesn't freeze, but it's still not really warm enough to do well with peppers or bananas, things like that. But it's good with like broccoli, cauliflower, brassicas, things like that, right? Then the next farm is lower than Nairobi and warmer and drier. So that's good for papayas, bananas, eggplants, peppers, things like that, right? And then the next farm that we're starting is down on the coast. Kenya is amazing because you go from Mount Kenya is almost as tall as Kilimanjaro, right? So it's over 18,000 feet in elevation. And then you go from there in an 8-hour drive down to sea level where it's too hot to grow avocados, right? So you have all of those different biomes along the way where you can grow different things, right? So it's very unique in that way. So down on the coast, it's even, it's too hot for avocados, so that's really spices, right? So that's like bananas, coconuts, nutmeg, cloves, cardamom, vanilla, cinnamon, lots of the really hot tropics crops. Okay? So this is a good online platform to use, this RegenWorks. Right, so then we use Excel to lay out the planting plans, right? So typically the tree lines are typically, we try to also produce a lot of habitat, so it's like there's a lot of indigenous African trees that are slowly becoming more and more rare, right? So we're planting usually an indigenous tree, then a nitrogen fixing tree, then a timber tree, then a fruit or a nut tree, and we kind of go in that order. Right? And then some trees we plant just for biomass, right? Because we want to return those nutrients to the soil. So we actually grow a lot of enset, which is like the original banana. And it doesn't give a fruit. It gives a very small fruit that in Ethiopia, they mostly make liquor out of it. And they also eat the trunk. So they cut open the trunk and then steam it like taro or like a root. But we're just growing it for the biomass because it grows so big. It grows, the trunk will get like almost a meter wide, and you can just keep chopping and chopping and chopping. It just produces so much biomass that it's really an amazing cover crop or mulch crop for us, right? So in here we do banana, eucalyptus, cassava, avocado, cassava. This is like these are the rows of the trees, and then this is the vegetables between. Right? So again, we probably know a lot of this, right? That there's a lot of issues in ecological issues in the world. Again, Africa relies on almost 80% of its food from small farmers. So how can we transition? How can we help the farmers transition to regenerative and permaculture? Right? It's going to be hard for them to do that if they can't actually produce a crop that they can pay their school fees for their kids or buy data or whatever they need along the way as well. Right? So we're trying to hit the markets of more of providing habitat, food, fuel, fiber, fodder, everything on as small as 1 hectare, so about 2 acres, acre and a half, 2 acres. Right? So this is kind of what we've been talking about. The other issue is really what we're focusing on is traceability and transparency. So you can always come to the farm. You can see how we're farming. We do farm tours, and you can. It's all open source and open about transparency and traceability of the food, right? So this is our first trial farm, and this is up on Mount Kenya. This was an old rose farm, so they used to grow a lot of cut flowers there to export to Europe. And so it was defunct, and the greenhouses were all broken down, and so we got a really cheap price for this, or a good rate, right? So again, I talked about so we're a business, but we're also trying to provide a lot of social benefits, right? And one is that the budgeting that I was talking about, and then the farm land, and then also marketing. So we're helping the farmers with marketing. So those are really, and then obviously some of, the other, clean food, of course, it's like organic's a non-brainer, right? A no-brainer, right? Why would we spray poison on our food, right? So that's just like a given, right? But how can we go beyond organic and make it more regenerative, right? Because even a lot of organic farms, they're still importing lots of manure, lots of organic fertilizers, lots of imports. So once we get the stage set with the minerals in the soil, then basically all the nutrients, we're not bringing any other fertilizers in, right? Or pesticides or anything. Everything is produced right there. We're going to make compost, right? We're going to make maybe compost tea, or maybe bring some mycorrhizal inoculant in. But once it's set, we're not bringing in any outside fertilizers, okay? It's all just from cycling the nutrients on site. So here's kind of this is the second farm, so this is in March of 2022, so this is a little more than 2 years ago. This is this was that football pitch I was talking about, right? So it's very compacted, so we did have to till it the first time to loosen up the soil and to incorporate some calcium and phosphorus. Then there was a lot of invasive trees on the surrounding property. This is on at a conference center that they're trying to reforest with indigenous trees. And so there were some invasive trees that they allowed us to cut and chip for mulch, right? So that was the first mulch that we had. This is like wood chips, right? See, these are the tree lines. So these are all the little trees, right? And then this will be the veggie lines in between. Okay.
So there is a little stitch, is that
So those are the paths, right? So you only have the paths being at the most 2 meters wide, right? Because you don't want to step into the bed and compact the bed, because we're never going to till again. So we always want to, you have to be able to reach. So if I need to be able to, we can reach in 1 meter, right? So the beds are 2 meters, and then the tree lines are just 1 meter, even less. And then we plant the trees very close because we're going to be pruning them a lot. Right? So these are the paths. The paths, like to walk. So this is where you're walking. So this is where you walk, so you don't ever compact they're narrow. They're just like the paths are like this way, like half a meter, like yeah. So this way.
And basically cage bed and tree bed.
So that's in March. This is in May. So in 2 months, we're starting to get the veggies, right? So these are those 45-day veggies that are coming on, right? Not all of these are ready to harvest, right? So the radishes are ready to harvest in 45 days, but not, the broccoli is going to take 60 days, cauliflower is going to take 90 days, right? They're going to take longer, right? But this is a start. So in here, this is all vegetables between the rows of trees. Then over here, this is pasture. So in these rows, we sown some native grasses, chia, millet, so a whole range of different grasses and forages for the chickens. Okay. And this is October, right? So this is 8 months in, something like that. So you can see the trees are a little bit taller. And then this is the start of, this is the chicken tractors here.
The chickens only go in the rows where you planted native grasses and chia.
Yeah.
Do you also use them, or I'm not, this project isn't that old, do you also use them to like clear the beds or just to like plant other things, or like between crops?
No, not typically, because we're like, we don't even need to, like, as we're harvesting, we're planting. So we don't even, sometimes we'll take the manure out of the pasture side to use in the other beds or into the compost. But yeah, we usually don't let them over there because it's so densely planted. They'll eat the vegetables too.
They're pretty separate, and they're only by the trees.
Right, but then they get fresh pasture every day, so it just moves. We took motorcycle tires and put them on there on a trailer with their cover, and then we just drag it each day. So this is 1 year after planting. So this is March of last year, March of 2023. So here's the chicken tractors. So here's a picture of the chicken tractors. So you can see, like, this is where they've been already, right? And moving this way. Some of the eggs. Here's the egg products. Here's a picture. This is this one is about 2.5 years old. This is the first farm, not the one that I was just showing you, but up on Mount Kenya farm. So this one has more evergreens planted in the rows as well. This is a new bed that we just started, this is not the same farm, but a new field that we just started. This is at inset. So this is like a native banana that we grow just for the biomass. We're just constantly chopping and dropping this. Right? So this is just for compost. And then these are the veggie rows in between. Right, and this is just so this is May of this year, right? So this is a little over 2 years after planting. So these are this is the eucalyptus trees. So we're about to top them. Take out the tops to provide a little more sun. This is a pasture row, right? Because the chickens are coming, not a veggie row. And then in between these eucalyptus are native trees, avocado, lime trees, lemon trees, growing in between. Okay, so that's May of this year, and then this is just last month, right? So this is it. This is what is this, like almost 2.5 years, something like that, years old, right? About before we're just about to cut out. You can see now that the tree cover is getting almost too much for it to grow vegetables underneath. So now it's time to really chop out the tops of the trees and get poles out of those. Right? So here's like some of these are some of the poles. This is more of a native hardwood tree. Harvesting those out. Avocados are just starting. So we're just starting to get the fruit happening, right? So it's been 2.5 years. So it starts some of the first things are starting to give fruit. So the lemons, the limes, citrus, papaya we've had for a while, bananas, things like that. But we're still waiting for some of the longer term crops. No. Okay, so then like we were talking about with the, farmers are good at growing things, but then how can they get the best price for their crops, right? So in Kenya, there's a growing kind of middle class, right? And an awareness about organic, right? Everything used to be organic, right? Until 40 years ago in Kenya, right? So now it's like pesticide and herbicide and is rampant, and usually no one keeps track of how to actually do it to, the amounts that they're supposed to. So there's overspraying, there's tons of poison food out there. So really just trying to be, so we're running a lot of awareness campaigns about organic food and about the importance of clean food and not spraying poison on your food. There's also a big market for timber and charcoal, right? And they're cutting indigenous trees and old growth trees to make charcoal. So how can we produce that locally in a regenerative system, right? So we have an online platform. So this is our website to sell the products directly. So then that's like straight to the consumer, right? From the farm straight to the consumer. We also work with another online company. This is kind of like what you call like a online natural food company, and they deliver to your door. So it's all solar powered, electric vehicles, vans and motorcycles. So these are electric motorcycles. This is electric. These are electric delivery vehicles. That one's not. That's if you're far out of town, we can ship it through Wells Fargo, which is a local shipping company. So you can just go on and order, farm-raised tilapia, broccoli, rice, whatever it is. And then it's, if I order this afternoon, it comes to my house in the morning. If I order in the morning, it comes in the afternoon. It was at first just all vegetables and 100% organic, and now they've expanded to, give people more options. So now you can buy, wine from South Africa, still local beer, cider, or milk, organic milk, feta cheese, whatever that. But it's all brought to your door, right? Traffic is awful in Nairobi, so it's nice to have things delivered. So this is like one of our post-harvest places where we're washing and cleaning the vegetables, and they come and pick up the produce with their electric vehicle and then take it straight to the consumer, right? We also sell veggie boxes. So those are the weekly like CSA boxes. We also have a high demand from like chefs and people that are like caterers and chefs that want really high quality produce. So here's some of the just examples of the veggies. So that green spoon, that online, here's a little quick video. Let's see if this works or not. This is the woman that started that online platform. This is for CNN.
In Kenya, entrepreneur Juliet Kennedy has harnessed her passion for food to pioneer a whole new industry, teaming up with local producers like Forest Foods.
I absolutely love visiting this farm in particular because what Forest Foods is doing is really different. Syntropic agroforestry is not the easiest term to get your head around, but what it means is growing in harmony with a sort of forestry setup, which means that the plants really complement each other and help each other grow. And that, of course, means that you don't need the chemicals that other farms perhaps do need. And that means a lot to us because the safety of our customers and the quality of the produce that they get is first and foremost when it comes to how we source the vegetables that we sell.
Located just outside of Nairobi, they supply fresh produce to her company Greenspoon, the country's first online retail store dedicated to providing high-quality, sustainably sourced local produce.
Today, in particular, in 2024, Kenya's in a silicon savannah, and I think just general sort of upward mobility is something that makes me feel really excited. More people being more creative and being able to sort of come up with solutions that could actually apply globally.
And Juliet, who is better known as Juju, is one of those people.
Food systems and the environment are so closely connected. And why I love sitting in the food space is not just because I'm passionate about flavor and quality and so on, but it's also because it's something that all of us humans do every day. We consume food. So when we make the choice around food, if we can make choices that will actually impact the environment in a positive way, then the snowball effect can be so huge.
So So not only food, right? We talked about fuel and timber, but then a lot of these products we can also, a lot of these plants and trees can provide other products, right? So now we're starting a whole oil and essential oil line, right? So with the eucalyptus trees, eucalyptus oil. So now we're growing a certain type of eucalyptus that's higher in oil content. We do lemongrass, holy basil, starting this whole like essential oil line, and working with another local soap producer that they're trying to become a B corporation, but they couldn't because they were still importing their essential oils from Europe, right? So then we're going to start helping them with providing the essential oils, and then everything that goes into their soaps is going to be local, right? So trying to help close those loops with other companies. We also do courses. So permaculture, Syntropic Agroforestry courses, and then we also, if you're a local farmer, then we have a certain, like 25% of the attendees can be, what do you call it, like a free subsidy basically. If you're a local farmer and you're interested in becoming a farmer in the network, okay? So the first farm was up on Mount Kenya. This is Limuru. And then we started the one, Limuru, then Tatu City. So this is the one that's down lower than Nairobi. So this is right when we started it, right? And it's adjacent to a school, so a lot of the food is going to that school. And then this is like after, so then here, this is when it first starts, right? So you can't even see the trees because the trees are like, half a meter tall. So it just looks like a veggie farm, right? But then you see the process over 2 years with the other farm. Then this is the one up on Mount Kenya in Tamalu. And then like I was saying, the next one is down on the coast where it's very hot tropical. So we'll be doing a whole different set of crops in that area. So yeah, I can open it up for questions. I have another little short, like 2-minute video, but we can skip that or it depends on what you want. If you want to do questions or watch another little video.
我想有2个问题想请教一下，平均在1公里下来需要多少人去管理这个农场？第二个就是在去了农业一开始的时候，很大的问题是需要非常多的种子，主要部分是由他们公司来提供的，还是要非常大量，那个成本非常高。
And so I was wondering how much is 1 hectare or 1 acre output of this kind of Syntropic one? And then the other question is, where are you getting these nursery trees from? Because these young trees could be very expensive in this big quantity. So.
Exactly. So we have we grow some from seeds. So some vegetables we grow from starts. There's also a really good company that does seedlings, right? So a lot of times we'll buy the seed and then just have them grow for us because it's a fraction of a penny per seedling for them to grow it out for us because they have the whole setup, the automated, just do all the seed. So some we direct seed, and then others we have another farm that grows starts the seedlings and we get trays of the baby seeds. Some of the fruit trees are more expensive. There may be $1 or $2 a piece instead of just pennies. And so we're working with other kind of nurseries to getting those as well. But yes, like you said, there is a big capital expense, right, to start with the irrigation, the equipment, the trees and the plants, right? So there is an investment on the front end. And so we're just now, so that's the hard part is, right, even though it's you have some cash crops along the way, but it's like we just had our first profitable month, right? So it took about 2 years, and we knew that would take that long. Like we have revenue, right? So this year we're going to bring in gross around $100,000. But we're just starting to kind of make a profit, right? Because there was so much money to put into all of the, the wages, the staff, health insurance, all the equipment, the buildings, everything. And Kenya is very strong with actually, it's surprising, you'd be surprised, but strong with health insurance and paid time off. You have to invest, you have to pay a pretty high rate of paid time off, and labor rights is actually pretty strong in Kenya. So there is a even though maybe the monthly wage is not necessarily as high as many places around the world, they make, for example, I have a business in the United States, and we have to put in a much higher percentage into health insurance and for paid time off in Kenya than we legally have to in the United States. It's funny. But I don't know if that answered your question or not.
How about for a 1 hectare, how much manpower or person power needs to go into a 1 hectare or 1 acre within this kind of system?
Right, so the one in Tamalu, we have about 4 people full-time on that piece, right? To start it, we needed more people, like 10 people for about a month, and for the planting. But then now that it's going, it's mostly just trimming, it's mulching, and then harvesting. So usually in the morning it's mulching, and then harvesting in the afternoon for them to come pick up the produce.
Is it a 10-hectare site or another?
No, that one is only like 1 hectare, so 2 acres. Yeah, the new one. This one is 10 hectares. Here's all the sizes. Tamalu, this one's even just a quarter, so like a half an acre. This was our like test plot just to see, is this gonna work, you know. Then this one is the Tatu is I think 6 acres, 3.5 hectares. So about 6-7 acres, something like that. And then the first one, this one is about close to 1 hectare, like 2 acres, something like that. But we're getting, like I was saying, so there's those rows, and typically we'll at least have 3 or 4 things growing. But the row is 2 meters wide and 100 feet long, so about 30 meters long. And we were getting out, like in each row, so you're not just growing broccoli, but when we were growing broccoli, we were getting almost 2 tons, 1.7 tons of broccoli out of each row. But then there's also 2 or 3 other crops in that row as well. So we're planted very intensively and close together for high production.
So I know agroforestry systems are really dependent upon the climate, and this has been like they've been doing it for a long time in Brazil. And you said you've like done some of the learning from like Syntropic in Brazil. What have been some of or I guess have there been any challenges of like trying to apply it or taking it from Brazil and trying to apply it in Kenya?
What's the biggest challenge? It's a fairly similar climate, so that's been really helpful, right? So you wouldn't have this quick of growth if it wasn't a tropical system, right? If you were in a temperate zone, it's going to be, because you have a dormant period, so it's going to be a slower process, right? So like, I work a lot with like Mark Shepard up in Wisconsin, and so his system is slower because he's got 6 months of ice on the ground, right? So this is a fast system, but that's why you have to keep feeding the soil, right? Because everything grows so fast, it's consuming those nutrients so quickly all of the time.
Would you, like, for his question about, like, the getting seedlings from other places, especially for, like, fruit trees, but even for, like, the eucalyptus and something, did you decide to purchase those because it's more affordable in Kenya? Or if it wasn't as affordable, would you have done a different business model if you were, say, doing it in the U.S. and, like, made nursery a bigger part of the business?
Right. Well, it's hard because fruit trees typically are grafted, right? And so it's, if you start something by seed, you're mostly going to get the rootstock. You're not going to get like the So typically it's most people just buy them from other nurseries. I mean, there's certain things that you can, obviously, like papaya, bananas are like a clone. You know, there's certain things that you can get, but the grafted fruit trees. For the the specialty trees and like the mangoes that stay smaller, like the semi-dwarf varieties and things, So so we've been buying most of our seedlings. Some things we've grown out by seed, but most things we've. I don't know if we have a couple of minutes. Should I play a little clip? Let me see if this may be something good to end on.
Ningeomba sana sana watu wakuje kututembelea ndio tusome na wao.
Sehemu kidogo tu unapata chakula mingi na yenye haina dawa na wakaribisha.
Can be a design with indigenous trees and with fruit trees.
Podocarpus latifolius, this beautiful Marchamia lutea, both are indigenous, and again a beautiful lemon.
Mbeleni sikuwa najua kwamba miti na chakula inaweza kuwa pamoja. Nilikuwa najua tu chakula ikuwe kando, miti ikuwe kando. Lakini nimegundua unaweza fanya yote pamoja, ukuwe na miti, ukuwe na chakula na yote iko sawa.
Unakuja na watoto wako, family tours, unakuja mnajifunza jinsi ya kukuza chakula bila dawa.
Je, wewe ni mkulima? Ungependa kusoma jinsi ya kuboresha mazao yako? Karibu kwetu shambani. Jifunze jinsi ya kukuza mimea bila dawa.
Our farming systems work with nature to maximize carbon sequestration, promote soil health and biodiversity.
Syntropic Agroforestry promises you enhanced soil health, better water management, food security, improved livelihoods.
A lot of biomass that was enough to cover our pathways.
Let's fight climate change together.
Grown with love and passion from our farms.
The nutritional level that we desire to have when we are eating our food.
Directly from our farm to your doorstep.
Now you can see all the different species in their own stratification.
Wondering how? Come, I'll show you.
Anyway,
last question.
Yes.
想要问一下，就是你种植方法是不是在采收的时候人力是需要的？
I was wondering for Syntropic Agroforestry, would it take intensive labor to harvest?
It does take time. I mean, the cash crops take more labor to harvest, right, and to wash and clean, right, to get it ready for market and packaging. So that's the most of both the planting and then the harvesting part. But not really any more than other farms. The one thing that's maybe more labor on a Syntropic farm is the pruning and the trimming. The management is a little more intensive. But that's to return the nutrients back to the soil instead of bringing in exterior fertilizer. So you're saving, maybe you have more labor, but you're saving on inputs, you're saving on buying external inputs to create. Thank you.
Thank you.一刷根39大林邦呀，噔噔噔噔啊巴扎呀扎呀。